All right, welcome everybody. I'm glad you're here. I'm so glad to introduce our guest speaker today, Christophe Rico, for the lecture. Dr. Rico is a linguist. He is a specialist in Koine Greek. He received his PhD from University of Strasbourg in Greek linguistics. Sorbonne. University of Sorbonne now that's the main university in Paris. He is a member of the faculty of Strasbourg University, and he is a Greek language teacher at École Biblique in Jerusalem, and he runs the Polis Institute in Jerusalem. He's published books on Greek and Latin pedagogy. His textbook on Greek, it's about 300 pages long, and it is a huge majority written in Koine Greek. There's very little English at all in it, and yet he can lead people straight through with high comprehension in Koine Greek, and it's really been well received by the field. I should say here right now on a personal note that the field of communicative Greek Hebrew studies, it's not a large field, and unfortunately in some ways it's fairly splintered, and it's in just hearing people talk, it's very easy for one person to slight what another person is doing. And yet I've heard many people talk about Christophe Rico, and I've not heard any slighting comments about him or about what he's been doing at all. He's very well received and very highly respected. And so I'm so excited to be able to learn from him. And he's also published a whole book on Isaiah 7:14 for the word that's translated virgin. And it's been under attack. It's like, no, it doesn't really mean virgin, but he's arguing, no, this word does mean virgin. This is a prophesied virgin birth. And then he has a book on the translation techniques of Jerome. So welcome, Christophe Rico.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jesse, and thank you to all the faculty and staff of Sattler College for this invitation. It's a honor for me to have been invited here. I will talk today about teaching ancient Greek, Latin, and other languages through the Polis method. So to give a little bit of a broader perspective, I would say that the cultural sources of the West are on one side the Judeo-Christian source, and on the other side the Greco-Latin source. In Europe, during 2 millennia, there was a European synthesis that was made, and then it spread over the world. And the languages for the transmission, especially in antiquity and the Middle Ages, were Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Syriac, and Arabic. So we can say, coming back to Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Syriac, and Arabic, all the main disciplines that we have. For all the main disciplines, there is always a first book. Let us say, for literary criticism, we have the Poetics of Aristotle. This is the first book. For the theory of music, we have the treatise of Aristophanes. For for medicine, we have the books of Hippocrates. For philosophy, we go back to the pre-Socratic philosophers and then to Plato and Aristotle. And those are the first philosophers. And we could go on like that, and to make a long story short, I would say that most of our disciplines today, of the different disciplines of knowledge, have a first book which happens to have been written in Greek. And this is the foundational text of that discipline. I'm not saying by that the Greeks invented everything. I won't say that, like in that famous movie where there was someone who was saying that every word would go back to Greek ultimately. I'm not saying that. There have been many other civilizations before. But The Greeks have somehow made a synthesis of that knowledge, and they have produced the first a reference book in nearly every discipline that we are cultivating today. So from that point of view, the Greek language is essential. We cannot overstate the importance of the Greek language. The number of words in English that come ultimately from Greek is impressive, many more than what we would think of at first sight. Then we have Latin. Everything has been translated from Greek to Latin. We have Hebrew, which is because there is something which the Greeks haven't, in which the Greeks haven't contributed to the Western world, and it is religion. From that point of view, the Greek religion is very poor, and I mean, I guess that nearly everybody here is Christian. We as Christians are very much indebted to the Hebrew language for the main words of our faith, and to the Greek and somehow Latin language also. And then we have Syriac and Arabic. Why is it important? Because most of the text of the Greek text have been translated into Syriac and then from Syriac into Arabic. So there is a huge history of scholarship related to these languages. So at the same time, all these texts are somehow an inaccessible inheritage. Let us take the medical treatises of Galen. So Galen is, you have mainly two, we can say that we have mainly two main physicians in the Greek ancient world. We have Hippocrates and we have Galen. Hippocrates is somehow like the founder of modern medicine. But then you have Galen, who has left us 20,000 pages of text on medicine and other topics. And they are mostly untranslated. When I say untranslated, I am not accurate. Everything has been translated into Latin. So either you know Latin or you know Greek, and most of it has been translated also into classical Arabic. And in English, we have 15% of Galen, which is translated. And in other languages, or the modern languages, we might have another 10% perhaps. Sometimes there is a lot of overlap. So mostly, if you want to read Galen, you need to know Greek. I had once to publish an article, and I wanted to quote Galen, and I had myself to do the translation, because there was no translation. Alcuinus. Alcuinus is a very important guy. He was commissioned by Carolus Magnus to establish a program of studies in one of the first Renaissance. We always refer to the Renaissance as the 16th century Renaissance, but there have been many other Renaissance throughout history. And Alcuinus was very important from that point of view. And yet, most of his works are untranslated. 70% of ancient and medieval sources are untranslated. Once I had a student who came to me and told me, I would like to study a Greek word, the word anothen, in the dialogue of Jesus with Nicodemus. So in chapter 3 of the Gospel of John. And he told me, I would like to know what it means exactly. Is it to be born again? Is it to be born from above? What do you think? I told him, I don't know, because the two meanings are extant in Greek, but I don't know exactly. What I suggest is that you take the first commentaries of, first of all, you take all the ancient translations, because a text has been written to be understood. Many times I see that, especially for the New Testament, you have people who try new translations and try and come with their own theories. I mean, if there is someone who proposes as a translation of a text of the New Testament something that has never been understood like that in antiquity, you can be sure that it is nonsense. Because a text is written to be understood. And the text has been understood by the first people who received the text. And to suppose that people in antiquity didn't understand Greek, or that we understand Greek much better than them, is really something very foolish to say something like that. Because sometimes I have noticed that I thought that the word of the gospel meant A, and then I went to ancient translation and they say A, but they are saying B. And then I made more research on the syntax of Greek, and I found that it was B and not A. So the ancient translations are for me a light into the meaning of the text. So this guy told me, okay, I have found 6 different commentaries, Greek commentaries, of the text of Nicodemus. And there are only, out of these 6, there are only 2 that are extant in modern translations of any modern language. What shall I do? And I told him, look, I will translate for you the 4 other texts, and like that you will be able to do your research. But you see what is the situation. So we think that everything is translated, and it is not true. I am not going to say that nothing is translated. It would be an exaggeration. For sure, all the Attic text has been translated, and many times translated. But there is a lot that hasn't been translated. Yes, sometimes there is snow in Jerusalem. So there are risks and challenges because the 21st century woman or man has become unable to understand or assimilate her or his own spiritual heritage. And ancient languages are a key to enter the library, which is the foundation of Western culture. If someone is able to read fluently ancient Greek and Latin, that person has received in his or her hands the key to the Library of Alexandria. Just open, here you have the text, read, okay? This is what we cannot do. We have always the screen of a translation when there is a translation, and many times there is no translation. Don't forget that up till the 18th century, beginning of the 18th century, most of what was published in Europe was published in Latin. So there is a huge Neo-Latin literature that is untranslated and that people don't know about. And now that there is a kind of renaissance with, I'm going to this weekend to the Paideia event in New York. There is in Fordham University, the Paideia Institute is organizing a symposium for all the Latin and Greek speakers in the States. And there are every year like 300 people who gather. Imagine the average age of the people who are gathering, 25. Latin is a language which is full of youth. And Greek, for ancient Greek is the same thing, 25 is the average. I mean, it's amazing. You have someone who is talking without papers, without anything, in Latin, in a very beautiful Latin for 25 minutes, and then you have questions in Latin, and people follow. I mean, it's amazing. So we have in the last, in the years 95 to 2010, there have been some new realities with respect to the teaching of ancient languages. There was the Academia Vivarium Novum, founded in Napoli in 1996, where Latin is only spoken 24/7 for a year, for people who go there. There is the Conventiculum Latinum Lexingtoniense in Lexington every year. It's a week. It lasts a week, and everything happens in Latin there. Then there is the institution Salvi, which was founded in Los Angeles in 1997. There is the Kyklos Hellenikos in Paris in 2006. It was founded. It's a Greek circle, Greek-speaking circle. There is the Paideia Institute that I have just mentioned, and we are really the very last ones in Jerusalem. We started in 2011, and we teach Greek, Latin, Classical Arabic, Modern Arabic, Biblical Hebrew, Modern Hebrew, and Coptic and Syriac. And all these languages within the language. That means that from day one, only the language that is taught is spoken. So from day one, the students can only interact within the language that is taught. So why Jerusalem? Many people have asked me, why Jerusalem? Well, Jerusalem is the cradle of Europe. It's the region of Jerusalem, the Middle East, is the place where Jerusalem is the place where most of the books of the Bible have been written. It's the region of Jerusalem is where the alphabet started. The very idea of week is the holy city for Judaism, Christendom, and Islam. It's the meeting point between East and West. And the spoken languages today, or the spoken languages that have been spoken in Jerusalem in the past, are sources of the Western culture. Today, Arabic and Hebrew, and in the past, Greek, Aramaic, Latin have been spoken there. So there is a tremendous potential, and yet there was not in Jerusalem any institution where it would be possible to study in an international, non-confessional, and relaxed atmosphere Western cultural sources. You have the Hebrew University, which, as the name says, it's a Hebrew university. And 98% of the staff of the Hebrew University are Jews. You have the Al-Quds University, which is a Muslim university, and 98% of the teachers of Al-Quds are Muslims. From that point of view, there was a lack of a place where people from all over the world could study the sources of the Western culture in that way. So the first problem is formation of ancient languages teachers, because it's not enough to know the language, you have to know how to teach it. So in fact, I am always saying that in all the classic departments, and I have been through that, when I finished my PhD, I had a PhD in Greek, but first of all, did I know Greek? Certainly not. I was not able to speak, even to say hello in Greek, or to say get out from here in Greek. Something as simple as that, I would have needed to think a lot. And then I have no clue on how to teach a language. So I had no clue on second language acquisition. So I mean, I had a title, which was a PhD, but it didn't mean anything. So first thing is formation of ancient languages teachers, and then to develop educational tools to study those languages. Once I was invited to Tel Aviv. There is an institution which is called Instituto Cervantes for the development of Spanish throughout the world, and they have centers everywhere. And so I entered the library, and suddenly I saw they tell me, look, here you have methods of Spanish for people who are involved in juridical studies. And this is business Spanish, and this is Spanish for children, and this is Spanish for university students, and this is Spanish from America, and this is, and then I went to another place, and they told me, here we have books of, some novels for people who have 1,000 words of vocabulary in Spanish, and you had like 10, 15 different novels. Then for people who have 2,000 words vocabulary in Spanish, 3,000 words. And then they showed me, and here we have documentaries in Spanish with subtitles, films in Spanish with subtitles, and here we have this and that. And suddenly I thought, and in Greek, what do we have? Apart from grammars, almost nothing. So there is a whole culture to establish in order that it becomes easy to learn that language. I mean, it's not surprising that after there are people spending, and this is what I did for years, spending years learning from the age of 16 till the age of 30. I was learning Greek until my PhD, and I was not able to take at the end a dialogue of Plato and to read it without translation, without dictionary. So it's a big failure. I mean, the conclusion is that the classic studies are a big failure. And then there was a need of contributing to the revival of the languages that are linked to our culture. So this is why Polis Institute started, which is located 200 meters from the walls of the old city in a very beautiful neighborhood. This is the first promotion of our first graduate program in 2013. Now we have many more students, but those were the first ones. I think that someone knows Joseph, who appears here in this picture. Okay, and they came from many different countries. Germany, France, Argentina, Dutch, Netherlands, etc. Okay. So Polis teaches ancient languages, gives ancient languages courses, also modern languages courses, and it has developed 2 master programs. We will talk about them, and a 1-year program of each of the master programs, and a 2 years program in Greek fluency. So let us talk about our topic, which is, but I had to make this long introduction. How should ancient languages be taught? In 1528, Erasmus, in his book Ciceronianus, depicts a character who is called Nosoponus. Nosoponus, the one who takes, the word means the one who is getting ill with his efforts. And Nosoponus suffers from Ciceromania because he wants to really write like Cicero, which was supposed to be the best Latin orator. And over the course of many days and nights, he manages to write a very short letter in Latin. And he avoids all conversation in Latin as he finds it impossible to speak Latin correctly. Well, you see the point. Erasmus is making fun of those who don't dare speaking the language because they think that this will harm the quality of the language. And he was very much in favor of speaking Latin and learning Latin speaking it, and learning ancient Greek speaking it, and so on with all the languages. In fact, Latin, I wouldn't say the same thing for Greek, neither for Greek nor for Biblical Hebrew, but Latin has been taught as a living, to some extent, as a living language till the beginning of the 19th century. Already in the 3rd century AD, we have a very interesting collection of dialogues which are called the Hermeneumata Pseudodociteana. Those are texts, it's the first texts that were written to teach languages in the history. So you see, even for language pedagogy and second language acquisition, you have a first text which happens to be in Greek. In fact, it is bilingual, Greek and Latin. So you have the story of a boy who is a small boy who is getting up early. He's brushing his teeth. So we have in that text the word to brush your teeth in Greek, which was difficult to find, but it is there. And they, by the way, ancient Romans, not everybody, but some of them, they did brush their teeth. Sometimes we think that they were very, okay. So Greek and Latin, so you have the Greek dialogue and you have the Latin text beside. So it's very, very lively, you see. Then Erasmus wrote the Colloquia Familiaria, those small dialogues that are very nice, and it helped to learn Latin. The same thing with Mathurin Cordier and Jacobus Pontanus. So the Polis methods rest on 2 main principles. The first principle is full immersion, but that's no originality at all, because I would say most of the people who teach languages in a serious way, they do teach through full immersion. But then there is the dynamic language development. What does it mean? It means that one has to internalize the elements of the target language. So when we learn a language, we have to internalize what we are learning. It's not something just conceptual, but it has to be automatical. I mean, it has to, we cannot think, I mean, when we are talking, it has to come spontaneously. And that order of internalization has to follow the inner structure and dynamics of that language. So there are things that have to be taught first, and there are things that have to be taught much later on. If you take any method of Koine Greek, you will see that the first thing that people are taught is the present indicative, and then almost immediately the imperfect indicative. Well, the imperfect is one of the last tenses that a child would have learned in ancient Greece. So it doesn't make any sense to learn immediately the imperfect. And yet, you will see that in any textbook of Koine Greek, that the imperatives are learned, are taught at the very end. Whereas this is the first thing that a child will learn. I mean, I remember when I grew up in Morocco and in Casablanca. So I was exposed to Arabic when I was a child. And when I left Morocco, I was 12, and I would know 400, 500 words in Arabic. That doesn't make up a language. But I had the imperatives. Sometimes I didn't know to say I went or I will go, but I knew how to say go, because that I was hearing that all the time. The first thing you learn is the imperatives. So, and you see, when you take, for instance, in Greek, take, labe. This is the core of the verb, okay? Then we have he took, elabe. You add something. He is taking, lambane. The verb starts getting other things, you see? But you have to start with the core. If you don't have the core, how are you going to... It seems sometimes that we teach languages as we were building a house, starting with the roof. That doesn't make any sense. So research on first language acquisition, on mother tongue acquisition, is taking into account in laying out the grammatical progression. That's a key point of the Polis method. Then there is this holistic approach, especially in the early stages. The pragmatic communication skills are prioritized over grammatical analysis. So we all have memories of how difficult and painful it was to learn rosa, 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 and so on, okay, all these declensions. The most important thing is to speak, okay, to communicate. What is pragmatic communication? It's to communicate. So we learn to communicate, and then little by little we discover the grammar, but not the other way around. We all have learned English. It's not my mother tongue. You have learned English without grammar, and grammar came afterwards, if it came. So, but the English was there. So, and then another point is that students comprehend much more than they produce. So they can be exposed to the language, they understand, and they will produce afterwards, like a child. A child who is 6 months old is already able to understand quite a few things, but not to speak. And those who have small children will notice that. 6 months, already the child understands things. And okay, so they are able to use language that they cannot analyze yet. That was what happened to me with Arabic. I mean, I remember I knew how to say I don't know, because that I had heard many times. Manarf, this is in Moroccan Arabic how you say I don't know. But I couldn't analyze, and it was much longer afterwards when I came to Jerusalem and started learning Arabic, I understood that ma means no, that the n means I, and the arf is no. So I don't know, ma narf. But for me, manarf was a full word, you know. So then there is a gradation of the language acquisition process. First, we have to develop the 4 basic language skills, and then we have to get into the different modes of discourse. Let us see first the 4 basic language skills. Well, the first thing is to listen and to understand. So you don't ask someone who is starting to learn a language to speak. First, that person has to listen. So then the person will start speaking, and only afterwards reading. We don't start reading. But it's the other way around what we are doing. I mean, when Latin is taught, usually we start reading. We haven't listened. We have even less spoken, and we're already reading. It is the third stage. And then we write. So there are different modes of discourse. The most easy way of talking is dialogue. When you learn a foreign language, the most difficult thing is to write a poem in that language. Okay? And then would be to argue in a language that is not yours. But the most easy thing is a one-on-one conversation. You want to know where the post office is, and you start making gestures and so on with a person who is in front of you, and in the end you will get through. I mean, the dialogue will be established even if you know only 10 words. It is possible to have already a dialogue. So the first thing is the dialogue. Then narration, to tell what has happened to you. Then argumentation, to give a speech. Then poetry. So this order has to be followed. This is a teacher of biblical Hebrew, Or Bensby, and she's teaching in Rome, in a course that we had in Rome, biblical Hebrew in a living way. And it's interesting. Well, this happens. It doesn't happen at Polis Institute because we wouldn't have had this kind of tables that are very. But the important thing is that there is a space so that the tables are in a U shape, so everybody can see everybody and dialogue with everybody, and there are things that happen in the middle. But the kind of we don't have tables. We have only chairs in Polis. Chairs which have a kind of tablet like that, and so it's very easy to get up, to move. We will talk about that afterwards. So, what are the elements of Polis method? First, where are your keys? So that's a method that we haven't invented it. It's a technique rather than a method. A technique that has been developed to learn the different Indian languages in the States. And it starts with gestures. So at the beginning, when you are just starting, you want to communicate. You want to say, I don't understand, or you want to say, please repeat the word. So there are gestures that you do like that. You don't have the words, but you can do like that, and the teacher can repeat the word. Or you can do like that, and it means slowly. I mean, there are all kinds of gestures that the students learn at the beginning in order to be able to communicate with the teacher. Then there is Revivial sequential expression through TPR. This is a technique that has been developed at the Polis Institute. First of all, TPR. What does it mean, TPR? Total physical response. That has been invented by James Asher in the 70s in Palo Alto. So James Asher would teach Spanish and French, giving some commands to the people, telling someone, get up. Stand up, walk, run, stop, write your name, jump. And so you learn the imperatives like that. And then just in the second, at the second stage, you have to give the commands to one another, and then you learn the imperatives. But what we have added is living sequential expression, a way of teaching TPR. Living sequential expression means that when we learn a language, it's important to learn it through connections, okay? How does memory work? Memory works through different elements. First element, memory is sensory, okay? What we see through our senses, we remember. Then, memory is something that you have experienced. If you have experienced something, you remember forever, okay? So when you tell someone, stand up, and he really stands up, he or she will remember forever, okay? Because the word stand up came while doing the action, so then one remembers. But then there is another element, which is the connection between the action. If there is a logic, it's much easier to remember. If there is no logic, if I learn, I mean, take for instance the assimil method. I don't know if you are familiar with that, but the assimil method, which was revolutionary in the 70s, but now it's completely outdated, So the assimil for English. Many people in Europe have learned English with assimil. So the first sentence was, my tailor is rich. Second sentence, your parents are poor. Third sentence, his cigarette is finished. So my tailor is rich, your parents are poor, his cigarette is finished. No way to learn a language like that. It's completely unconnected. So we need living sequential expression. So here you have a sample, very simple sample. You have the teacher who says, anasthesia. So he stands up. Peripate, yes, after standing up, what I am going to do, I am not going to stay here like that. I'm going to walk. Then sthethi, yes, if I am walking, I stop. Then kathison, sit down. So there is a logic, you see? And then you have the present tense, the aorist, the future. So it's very easy to connect these actions one with the other. And so living sequential expression is trying to map the actions that we do every day, the actions that we do every month, the actions that we do every year, and to describe them through an order like that. I will show you, if we have time, I will show you afterwards. What time is it now? 2:30? 2:38. Okay. So then something very important that students are struggling with all the time is the difference between you and me, because you is humeis, you and us is hemeis. Humeis, hemeis. They can hesitate about you and us for 2 years. So the first thing we teach them, humeis. So look at my lips, humeis. I point towards you. And then hemeis, me and those who are here, hemeis. So then they don't forget. So other elements of the Polis method are grammatical induction, gradual text difficulty. Okay, this is one of the first dialogues, but that a dialogue has to be read when you have all the elements to understand the dialogue. You don't have a dialogue if you don't understand the words of the dialogue. So the dialogue has to come once everybody knows all the words that are here. And here it's a dialogue which is illustrating, as you see, the verb aimi, to be. I am, you are, he is, we are, you are. So then images and accessories. We need images to interact. Look at this guy. What does he have in his hand? A teddy bear. And he is puzzled, isn't he? So what does he have to do? It's very simple. First of all, look, here you have a group of 4 people, there you have another group of 4 people, and here you had another group of 4 people. And I was going from one to another. They are learning the subjunctive in ancient Greek. So the first one was saying, give me the teddy bear so that I don't get angry. And the second one says, you give him the teddy bear so that, and then there's a subjunctive, you don't get angry. Then the third one was, he gives him the teddy bear so that she does not get angry. So these objects help us to interact and to learn the different tenses and to internalize them. And it was so successful that that class that 2 days afterwards I saw this picture in the Facebook of this guy, and he said it was written just dos moiten arkon hiname orgisto. So give me the teddy bear so that I don't get angry. So then gradual exercises difficulty. You have exercises where you have to complete the text. You have exercises where you have several options. And you have exercises where you have to compose. So the exercises should go from the closest one to the most open ones, okay? So to develop the art of composition. Then conversational pair and group work. Like here, this is a class of Hebrew, and each one has a paper, And some have questions and the other ones have answers. And those who have the question have to find the person who has the right answer. And this is what they are doing. You see, here is one of the right answers. It's modern Hebrew. So then there are songs. This is a song about the alphabet. We won't have time to listen to it, but it's a beautiful song. Then storytelling and story building. Storytelling is a technique where you tell a story, you have some people who enact it, and usually you pick up the funniest people in the class, and those are the ones who enact the story. And then every now and again, you ask a question to make sure that people have understood. So for instance, you say, there was a king who had 2 sons. Was there a king or was there a queen? A king. How many sons did the king have? 2, and so on. And they say that in Greek, and little by little they learn the sentences, they learn the structure of and they are interested also by the story. And story building, you have a story which is through images. Here you don't see it, but there is a donkey who is taking a shower. And it's the story of a donkey. So for each slide, we ask questions. So what is there? What do we see? What is the donkey doing? He's singing, and so on. And little by little, you associate what you are hearing to an image. So you don't forget. When you have seen the image of a donkey in the shower, you don't forget how to say these things in Greek. Then other techniques, lunches and outings in Greek, where the only rule is only Greek, no other rule. So if we have an outing which lasts 4 hours, for the 4 hours, everybody has to speak Greek. Classes in Greek. So we have in Polis, so those who are interested will be able to take a brochure afterwards. We have some classes that are in Greek. For instance, I have this year, I give a class on the theory of translation. It happens to be in Greek. And I have given also a class on the tree of life in the Bible, and it also happened to be in Greek. So people are forgetting that the class is in Greek, and it's after these kind of classes where I have found the students more inclined to go on speaking among themselves in Greek after the class when I was not there. Then there is the Greek speech, which is after the master program. Every student has to give a speech. The student receives a subject, and then the student has to give a speech after that, which is a 20-minute speech. I think that we don't have much time. We have several projects. Well, I could speak about the editions of Polis, other editions of other books. But we have Hansel and Gretel, who will be published soon. But I wanted especially, well, we have 2 masters: the master in ancient language, in ancient philology, where we have mainly Greek and biblical Hebrew, with other philology subjects like paleography, like linguistics, and so on. Also very important, in 2 years you really visit the Holy Land, because there is a class on ancient history and the history of the Holy Land, and there is a class about each site, and then there is a field trip where the site is visited, and that is incredibly useful. The master in Near Eastern languages, the certificate in Greek fluency, and other programs. We have had also interdisciplinary conferences, but what I wanted, and intensive summer courses, by the way. This summer course in Virginia, this summer in Virginia, June, July, there are 3 weeks, an intensive course, 3 weeks of Greek, and with the possibility of having credits, getting credits for any college in the States. And then in Lexington, there is, for those who already have a practice of Greece, there is a week where 24/7 we speak only Greek, but it's more activities. But this is for absolute beginners, people who only know the alphabet, and sometimes not even the alphabet. They come here, and after 3 weeks, they are really, because all the meals are in Greek. You know, it's a full immersion, and in a place that is, there is no big city around, so it's very much in the countryside, so you really are completely immersed. That's very, very useful for those who, in 3 weeks, want really to learn Greek. Okay, I would like to show a little bit the book on living sequential expression that we are preparing, just that you get an idea. Okay, let us go to view. Let's just put it in full screen mode. That's it. So this is the book. Well, first of all, you have the contents. That's it. We start. So we have 2 people, Alexandros and Nikolaos. Idu Alexandros, Idu Nikolaos. What's your name? My name is Nikolaos. What's your name? My name is Alexandros. So far, so good. This is not very difficult. And then we start with the first elements of living sequential expression. So stand up, walk, stop, sit, sit down. Here the only variation is we have treje, so run. And it's, you see the image and you understand immediately. I mean, it can be almost used by a self-taught student. So here and there. So sit here, sit there. Walk here, walk there. The words sit and walk were already seen in the former page. Run here, run there. Then come here, go there. So here it's the focus on going and coming. Come back. Come to the table, come to the board, and so on. And okay, so this goes for many, and each time you have also the different persons which are introduced, because here it's the boy who says anistamai, I stand up, porewomai, I go, and here the girl says you follow me, you have followed me, you will follow me. So here it's walking up and down. Here it's opening and closing, the different, so the window, the door. Those are the daily movements, which is the basis of any language. First of all, if I want to speak a language, I need to know that. If I don't know that, I cannot speak. So getting out and entering. Then we introduce the demonstrative, masculine. So this is a window. What's that? This is a chair. What's that? This is a table, and so on. Very simple. It goes on like that. Then the simple movements of the body. You see? Open the mouth, close the mouth. Then giving, taking, and showing, also the most basic things. Then you introduce the plural, as you see, with the same verbs that they already know, but always connected. So stand up, walk, sit down. It has to be something connected, otherwise it's more difficult to learn. And so this is about slow and fast. And here, everyday vocabulary. So you have go to bed. Lay on the bed. Listen to the story, to the fairy tale. Then get asleep. Dream about an elephant who is running. Wake up and get out of bed. So everything is connected. So the idea is to ask someone to do all these movements, and then people learn it, and then ask some students to tell each other to do these movements. Then what do we do every day? We go to the bathroom. So it's very easy to understand what's, so aphedron, what it means if you see the sign. Balaneion, what it means if you see the sign. Go to the balaneion. Stand up in front of the sink. Open the tap. Then wait for the hot water and wash your hands and wash your cheeks. Okay? And here, take the toothbrush. We have the word in Greek for a toothbrush. This is not a neologism. I mean, it's a word that is in the lexica. In the ancient lexica, you will find it. So he's brushing his teeth and so on. But there is a connection. And because there is a connection, we can talk about living sequential expression. And it helps to memorize. So those are only some pages of a book that we are preparing that will comprise all the everyday actions. And it will be very easy afterwards to have it, to translate it into Latin, into French, into Spanish. We can learn whatever language we want, and to be able to say the most basic things. So I think I have spoken for a long time. If you have some questions.
All right, thank you very much. And we should have a few minutes for questions.
Yeah, please.
So connecting from the more practical daily life Greek to what you find in the New Testament, where it's a lot more theological and kind of abstract from the daily life, where does the connection between those two come, and at what point does that come?
Very good question. So the first thing is that I have to say is that all abstract vocabulary comes from concrete vocabulary. And you don't understand abstract vocabulary if you don't have the grounds. So it's the same thing that we were saying before. If you start only with the abstract vocabulary, you start with the roof, but you need the foundations. I will give you just an example. You have a word in Greek which is prepei, which means it is convenient, okay? And this is what I learned, but I didn't really grasp the difference between prepei and other expressions that were similar to that and which also meant it is convenient. Up to the moment when I found in a text someone who was just dressing and trying ara prepei, does it fit? Okay, is it? So that's the meaning. Now once I got the concrete meaning, I understood the abstract meaning. I hadn't understood really the abstract meaning, the shade of meaning that the abstract meaning had, without understanding the foundation of that meaning. So it's very important to see that if you take the epistles of St. Paul, you won't understand anything if everything is abstract unless you have the foundation. Then if you take the Gospels, it's full of concrete things. The Gospels, I mean, you have parables. So the parables are talking about very deep things, but through concrete things, okay? You have dialogues, very simple dialogues. You have everyday life. It's full of everyday life. So if you want to understand the Gospels, you need to have this vocabulary. All these verbs that I have used, perhaps not the toothbrushing, but all the rest, even the word that you use for brush your teeth, xeo, that you have it in the New Testament. All the words that I was showing are there in the New Testament. They're in a different arrangement, but they are there. And in fact, I think that in the Polis book, I mean the first volume, which is the only volume which has been published so far, there might be 5 to 10 words which are not in the New Testament. All the rest of the 1,000 words that are used are all in the New Testament. So, so that's one thing. So it's very important to start with the foundation. But your question is excellent. Yeah.
What's your method for the pronunciation with the Greek?
Okay. So there is a lot of debate for that. You have basically three different pronunciations that are used. One is the modern Greek pronunciation. I think that we cannot adopt it for the very good reason that hemeis is pronounced in modern Greek imis, so us, and humeis, you, is pronounced imis. So you have a text of St. Paul where it is saying you and us and so on, and because you and us, I mean, if you pronounce it through modern Greek pronunciation, you don't understand what he's talking about anymore. Is it you? Is it us? We don't know. So I don't think we can communicate if we adopt modern Greek pronunciation. We can use it in a, I mean, I can understand that the Greek church use it as a liturgical language, because then it is read, but to communicate is not possible, up to the point that today in modern Greek you have different words to say us and you. Then there is another pronunciation, which is the pronunciation of Randall Booth. So Randall Booth has made a very accurate research on first century pronunciation. So, so that's legitimate. It is not what I have followed, and I will say afterwards why. Then the third possibility is to use the classic pronunciation or beginning of the Koine pronunciation, which is practically the Erasmian pronunciation, which is the one that we use, and which has the advantage of following what is written, following the spelling. So because in fact you have the same spelling ever since the 4th century BC till the end of the Byzantine times. So the easiest thing is to follow the spelling. Of course, the pronunciation has changed all the time over the course of history. But otherwise, shall I use, I don't know, a Byzantine pronunciation to read a Byzantine text and a 6th century pronunciation to read a 6th century text and a 1st century? So, you know, it becomes a little bit arbitrary. I understand the idea of Randall Booth because it gives you a glimpse of how the gospel were pronounced actually. Okay, good. But it makes life very difficult for the students because, for instance, euanthropy, this is hoianthropoi. I write hoianthropoi, but I'm going to pronounce euanthropy. So U would be oi and U, and A would be I and A. So there are a lot of vowels that will be pronounced in the same way. So I think that Greek is difficult enough, and that it is not necessary to add another difficulty. But that's but I understand those who, I think it is legitimate to follow the pronunciation of Randall Booth. Yes?
You had mentioned in your discussion about Spanish all the different materials that are there, and I loved your book that you just showed there. How prolific can Polis be? I mean, is this something that one author can do? Because really, in the ideal, wouldn't we have dozens or even hundreds of different materials to really see the language from different angles?
Oh, that's a very good question. So certainly one person cannot do much. I mean, I will finish the Polis method, that's clear. The second volume is about to be published, and the third will follow soon. And I will do a little more things, but that's it. The important thing is to change the way of teaching in order that there are more and more people who are able to really understand Greek, and then they will produce material. The important thing is to have a team and not a person. A person dies, but the team, and especially an institution, lasts. So if there is an institution like Polis where we have other teachers, I mean, there is Michael Kopf and Julie Etiou are the two other Greek teachers. They are fantastic, and they are working with this material and pedagogical material, and they're producing texts. So, and they are much younger. They are in their 30s. So this is what makes me hope that there will be a lot of material, because if it depended only on the person, it would be a pity. The important thing are institutions. Yeah.
So you talked a lot about the way you walk students through the process, but what recommendations you give to students on their own trying to learn? So like, for example, over the summer, say I want to keep and maybe develop some of the Hebrew that I'm learning this semester. Do you have any practical steps for how you can, the best ways to go about practicing that a little bit daily?
The first thing I recommend is that if someone has the possibility to attend a summer course where you have an intensive course, for instance, of biblical Hebrew. We have intensive courses in Rome, for instance, every year. For Greek, we have here in the States. So that's the best option. If you don't have the possibility, second best option is to read. But to read things where you understand most of it. So the difficult thing with Hebrew is that you need a lot of Hebrew to be able to read something that you understand. Because there is a theory by Krashen, which is called comprehensible input. And Krashen says that you don't learn if you understand only 50% of the text. It's a waste of time. And suddenly, when reading that, I understood that I have been wasting my time trying to translate on my own or to read on my own Plato because I understood 50%. But when you understand 90% or even 95%, then the 5% less that is left, this is what you learn. So you need comprehension. So if you don't understand, you don't learn. It's like almost paradoxical. So the more you understand, the more you learn. You learn the tiny part that you don't understand because it's within a context, then you understand.